Nature provides a safe place for me because when I'm there, I don't feel judged. I feel freed for all this stuff that we put in our head on a daily life. And that really, as you probably know, has a great benefit. When I'm going in nature, I feel that connection. I belong there. It's sacred for me. It's my church.
Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 440 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. This week, I had the absolute pleasure of chatting with Maria Ruggieri, and it was such a delightful conversation about creativity, curiosity, and the joy of making images. Maria comes from a background in scientific research, so we explored how photography has supported her through different phases of her life, especially now in retirement. We talked about nature as a safe space, the value of playfulness and intuition in the creative process, and how abstract scenes can help us express our connection to the world around us. If you're someone who's ever felt unsure about your creative voice or wondered how to stay inspired later in life, this one's for you. Before we dive in, a quick reminder that my new book is live on Kickstarter. Along with the book itself, you can pick up prints, postcards, and other awesome extras to help support the project and bring it to life. You'll find the link in the show notes. Your support would mean the absolute world to me. Okay, here's my conversation with Maria Ruggieri. All right, Maria Ruggieri, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Yes. I've been a huge fan of your photography for a while now. I believe the first person who recommended you for the show was my friend Michael DeMiola. He has a lot of similar photos like you, but it's interesting. I feel like your style of work is something I've been more and more gravitating to in terms of like what I like. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Me too. I like to talk about my stuff.
Awesome. No, that's good. I found a lot of people like don't want to talk about their stuff, but I'm happy that you're willing to come talk about your journey.
Yes.
All right. Well, for people who aren't familiar with you, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm Maria Ruggieri. I was born in Italy, where I lived since I was about 30 or so. My whole family is still there, and I keep in very close contact with them. So every week. Virtually at least. So because I wanted to do research, so I studied biology when I was in Italy, and the opportunities at the time for doing research were not that great. So I moved to the States where I could do that. The land of opportunities, hopefully still is. And I landed in San Francisco, which was a dream for me. Beautiful California, as you know, it's great. Spent quite a few years there with my husband. After that, I followed the work and I moved to New York, Long Island, where I spent 22 years. And finally, 5 years ago, we decided to close down our labs and retire, at least for me partially. And we decided to move to Seattle. We chose this area because of my love of nature, and my husband likes to be in a city, so I thought Seattle was a good compromise. And we've been here since a while, and I love it. It's lovely. I mean, it's surrounded by nature, as you know, and not too far away, and it's perfect.
What kind of research were you doing?
So I graduated in biology, and I did at some point, more than maybe 20 years ago or so, I moved into cancer biology.
Oh, okay.
Studying brain tumors lately. So exciting stuff. Challenging, but really very good.
And very much needed.
Very much needed, yes. I'm seriously concerned about how the perception of science is changing in this country.
Yeah.
And that's worrisome for the whole country and world.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that, but I bet
I know.
some of my listeners
Let's leave that aside.
might not be excited about that. So how did you first fall in love with photography? What did that journey look like for you?
I didn't get to play around with the cameras until I was in my late 20s. Actually, before I moved out of Italy, friends gave me as a present, one of these point-and-shoot cameras, and I used it just for documenting traveling and friends and things like that. When I came to the States, of course, I was impressed by the landscapes here, and I kept on taking pictures of that when I was traveling. However, it wasn't until I got my first digital camera that photography really grabbed me as a passion. First of all, I was excited to see that the results were immediately available.
Yes.
So I didn't have to deal with the frustration after I got my films back and see how bad the images were. So I could, start playing around, and I can say more about the usefulness of this digital camera to accelerate the learning process.
Yes.
So I had one of these swivel cameras, and so I could play around with compositions and see what I liked best. So when was it? In 2009, I decided first of all, I upgraded to a DSLR, which was a big step. And then I decided to attend an online course of photography through the New York Institute of Photography. And that was very helpful because it gave me the basis, and I could send in my work, and they gave me back critiques. But when we got to the topic of fashion photography or photojournalism, I just couldn't deal with that. First of all, it didn't fit with my interest. Then I didn't have the time to dedicate to these things because you need more than going to a park or a garden to take pictures.
Right, you need models, need lights, you need all kinds of stuff.
So first there was no interest, and then there was no time, so I quit. But that was, I reached my goal. That was just to have the foundation onto which to build by just going on the internet and listening to lessons and lectures, and maybe attend some online live seminars and get talks and so on. So by that time I had a macro lens, and I was stuck in Long Island, where I don't know if you know, but getting out of the island is a nightmare traffic-wise.
Yes.
So it's not something that you can do very easily. In fact, the LIE, the Long Island Expressway, is called the largest parking lot in the States. So, the areas that were really at hand were the local parks and the local gardens. And for the longest time, I just kept on taking pictures of flowers, which, I enjoyed. But then when I came to the Pacific Northwest, a whole new world opened up because, the parks are not too far from Seattle, and plus in the city as well, there are lots of opportunities for nature lovers to go and photograph.
Yeah. When did you move to Seattle?
5 years ago.
Oh, 5 years ago. Okay. It's interesting because I feel like your photography is at this upper echelon in terms of the types of images that you create. And it sounds to me like you didn't really discover that side of your voice until you had the opportunity to visit all of these awesome nature places in Seattle. So I'd be curious to hear about kind of how that transition happened and how you fell in love with those types of scenes and what that looked like for you.
So, my background primed me towards looking at details in nature.
Okay, like through the
As
microscope.
I said, through the microscope, yes. I know that was the best part of of my work to just marvel at this world that you don't see, but it's there. And so when I go around with my camera, it's almost like accessing a site that is normally not available to your eyes directly. I mean, especially when you look at grand landscapes, you get the overall image, the overall feeling of it. But yes, I mean, you can I can get lost in details.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And so there is that element of discovery that is playing a big role in my passion for details. On top of the fact that, you know, by training, when you practice science, you tend to be a reductionist, you know, to try and to make the problems into smaller bits so that you can tackle them more easily. So, but it's for me, it's a way to get more intimate to the subject, and therefore to know more. I mean, it's like in the relationship I have with people, I'm not very extrovert. I don't have tons of friends, but the few I have, I tend to be very close to, and I enjoy these deep dives into whatever it is, you know, being the subject of my work or photography or people.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you've lived all over the world. You lived in Italy, San Francisco, Long Island. Now you're in Seattle. How have the landscapes of those various locations influenced your creative perspective?
Well, first of all, in Italy, I didn't have a camera, so I didn't take many pictures, no. I actually remember when I was young and I was deciding what to do, for some time I thought I was attracted to arts, but I didn't have talents. You know, I wasn't good at drawing or things like this. So that pull was there, but it was not supported by some innate, you know, predisposition to it. And so I went into science, but I was always attracted by the figurative arts. And the camera has given me that opportunity to more easily transform my vision into, I don't want to call it art because it's too presumptuous, but into something that gives me the same feeling as when you're creating something. So as I said, I came to the West Coast and I was blown away by these, you know, the parks are amazing, especially coming from Italy. Everything here looks big. and also the fact that some of these landscapes are intact, are pristine, are still keeping that primordial essence, really was mind-blowing for me. I cannot say that it influenced my photography because, you know, I didn't have the tools and I didn't master the camera enough to develop that skill. Going to Long Island, as I mentioned, the limitations of access to places brought me to using the macro lens and the flower photography. There again, you know, my appreciation for details was playing out, and so it started developing in that way. I remember once attending a workshop, and the photographer who was running it looked at my portfolio, I mean the pictures that I printed, and he noticed that, you know, I had some talent for flower photography, but that's what I was doing. So of course, the more you do something, the better you become.
Yes.
That's a trick, right? And so, but when I came here, I was exposed to a different kind of nature. Seattle is surrounded by water, and water drew me in right away. I mean, it's like a magnet for me now. It offers so many opportunities to express my love for details, my love for abstract making, the curiosity of what's forming in front of me. So all these things have definitely influenced my practice.
That's awesome. You mentioned that you took the courses from the school and you ended up quitting. And since then, obviously, your photography has gotten better and better over the years. And you did mention that you attended a workshop. I was curious to hear you talk a little bit about what are some of the actionable ways that you've been able to gradually improve your craft over the last 5 or 6 years.
Well, first of all, doing it more often, that definitely
It
helps.
seems obvious, but like I have to tell people that all the time. Like you should get out and do it more often.
No, I mean, my drive to go out with the camera is so intense that, so you see, the way I approach photography is not to become a better photographer, although that comes a long way. It's because I'm pursuing this need, this to be creative, this interest to be in nature, and to be in this meditative state, which is what characterizes my being in the land somewhere with a camera in my hand. As I mentioned, I'm not very social, so I don't feel very comfortable in crowds. And when I go around, and even if there are people, I get into this concentrated state of mind that basically isolates me from anything else. It's just me and the subject of my photography. And so that pull, that attraction for this state of being is so strong that, everything else falls apart. I mean, I don't go out thinking, okay, today I'm practicing this type of photography. Or just to give you an example, I rarely use a tripod. So I know that my my images could be improved in some circumstances if I use a tripod, if I did focus stacking, things like this. But for me, it's more important what I get out of the process in terms of personal experience than the image itself. Of course, I'm excited afterwards to see what I managed to create. I love to share my photography. I post regularly on Instagram, but I'm not bogged down by technical issues.
Yeah, I've often found that the less, like, obviously you have to get to a point of comfort with the technical side of things, but once you get past that, and then if you eliminate as many things that kind of get in the way of creativity, I found that you can create a lot more really interesting images. I still mostly use a tripod, but not always, especially if I'm in a place I've never been before and I'm just walking around looking for stuff. I'll take the camera off the tripod and just play around. And if I come across something that I'm like, okay, I'm really in love with this, I'm going to take an extra 3 minutes and just dial it in and get it perfect. That's kind of my approach, but I'm totally with you in terms of like letting go of all the perfectionism and just enjoying yourself.
Well, I have to say also that the type of photography I'm drawn to, like abstract photography or details oriented, it's better served by handheld or double exposure, things like this. Having your camera in your hands it's more suitable than working with the tripod. I think that when I feel inspired by an image, whatever I see, I have to have an immediate reaction to it. I have to act on it and capture it and do something with it. If I spend time thinking, okay, is this? Of course, I look and frame the subject the way I think works better. And I take several images if I don't get what I want. But I don't tend to spend a lot of time thinking rationally. It's more like an intuitive response to what I see rather than a thought response.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I wish more people would kind of embrace that approach to making images. I can't tell you how many times I've seen other people, and myself included, where I'm drawn to something immediately, but then, I see someone else who's drawn to something immediately, and they spend so much time messing around with their gear and trying to get the tripod just right, and the lights moved on, the moments moved on. If it's an insect or it's a, like a flower, like maybe the situation has changed completely, and the thing that you were drawn to is gone completely. And so my approach lately has been more to like, okay, I'm going to get it. And then if the conditions are still good, then I'll get it really, really good. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's awesome. So you've kind of described nature for yourself as a safe place and somewhere that you call home. What does that look like for you, especially now that you've transitioned into retirement?
So first of all, nature has been a pull for me since I was very young. I was always drawn to the details around me in nature. And on top of, well, that's what drew me into my career as a scientist, first of all. But on top of that, nature provides a safe place for me, because when I'm there, I don't feel judged. I don't feel any responsibility towards my society. I mean, of course, towards the environment, I have great responsibility. I feel great responsibility. I feel no need almost to do anything. I just can be. I feel freed for all this stuff that we put in our head on a daily life, and that really, as you probably know, has a great benefit of releasing you from the stress that our modern life puts on us. So from that point of view, I feel like at home, because if you're lucky to have a supportive home, you feel unconditionally loved, accepted, and that's what I feel when I'm in nature. I feel that kind of connection. It's almost like an ancestral memory of where we belong, right?
Yeah.
Which, it's probably something that is in our DNA, right? Evolutionarily speaking. And so when I'm going in nature, I feel that connection. I belong there. It's sacred for me. It's my church, if you will.
I'm exactly the same. It's interesting because whenever I talk to people who, for whatever reason, maybe they haven't experienced that yet, or they grew up and have spent all of their time in a city, it's one of those things that's a little bit hard to explain without sounding a little woo-woo, but it is one of those things like you kind of just need to get out there and like spend the time and like connect with a place. And then that's why I love photography, is that it kind of becomes this intermediary where you're interpreting it through your own experience and kind of the way you see the world. And that's one of the things I just love about photography from that perspective, because like you can go to a place with your macro lens and your setup, and I can go to a place and we might see the completely different subjects that we're drawn to and come away with completely different images, but the overall overarching experience and what we personally get out of it might be very similar.
Yes. So for me, the camera offers a means to communicate with nature. So there is an exchange, right? I was thinking, if I'm there and I'm looking at a wonderful landscape, and yes, I get emotions, I feel great, but the moment I take the camera, it's like I'm talking with it, right? So I'm exchanging what I see, and I get back that kind of response, right?
Yes.
So
I wanted to ask you a little bit more around kind of like your goals with your images and kind of I know we've talked a lot about what you get out of being in nature and being a photographer, but you also mentioned that you love to share your work and you're posting consistently on social media. I'm curious, kind of like what do you get out of that act of sharing with others your photography?
We'll talk about play, I guess, at some point, but for me, it's like a kid who has seen something nice and says, "Mama, see that? Look at that!" So for me, that kind of excitement comes out when I want to share my photography I don't have big expectations in terms of, I don't care about likes or things like this. The comments are usually very banal, rarely insightful. But when I feel that people, and interestingly, because of my abstract photography, several painters, artists in that area respond to my photography. So for me, it's a satisfaction to be able to communicate at some level, even if it is not a direct way, to people at large. The way I use Instagram, anyhow. Now that I'm retired, maybe I have more time. I was thinking of setting up a website, more again for my own purpose of taking stock of my work. Where am I going? I just put together a little booklet for myself on my abstract images, and I realized that when you go through your work and you with a more critical mind, because by necessity you have to cull quite a bit of your work, then you get to see where you are and where you want to go. So maybe that's how I will use this process of setting up a website.
Yeah, no, that's important. Going back to Instagram, and I love what you said about using it just as a way of communicating with others and sharing your love of the process with others. I found that if your motivations are very inward focused in terms of like just having an enjoyment of it, wanting to connect with others, for me it's like about being part of a community and sharing my love of photography with other people. I found that if it has that inward focus, and you're not worried about likes and comments, and you don't really care about whether or not 1,000 people see it or 10 people see it, A, your experience with those platforms is going to be much more enjoyable, and B, I have found that the photography gets better and better over time as well when you don't have those external motivations and those things that you're kind of like chasing after. For me, the photographers that I love the most are the ones that are like, they just don't care and they just love to do it, and obviously that comes through in your photography as well.
It's interesting because sometimes I post my pictures are my babies, right? As you probably feel like it's very difficult sometimes to choose which one is your favorite. But nevertheless, once I go through the screening and the processing, and I choose what to post. And of course, there are some that are better than others. But sometimes I'm really surprised by the fact that an image that I thought it's okay, but didn't really move me that deeply, has a completely different response. And so, okay, well, that's interesting. But so I tend to detach myself from that kind of, and of course it has been a process. I cannot deny that initially I only started basically using Instagram 4 years ago. And at the beginning I was a little bit disappointed by the level of interactions that occur on the platform. For sometimes I even try to work to post on Vero, but then it became too much. I just don't like to deal with too many of these. I don't use Facebook, for instance, at all. Nevertheless, I got to the point where I said, okay, well, they like it, fine. They don't like it, fine. And so I keep on doing what is important for me.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned kind of early on, like, it's not really, doesn't seem like it's worth the time, or people haven't noticed my images or whatever. But I have found that like it does take some time to kind of like find your people. And, if people start to see your work either through the Explore algorithm, or maybe it just takes one person who really likes your type of photography, who has an audience themselves, who also likes that kind of photography, and then they share in their stories your photos, and then you start gaining more and more traction. So I think it's a patience thing, but also like not thinking about it too much and just kind of connecting with people that are like-minded. I find that that's a pretty good recipe for success in terms of having enjoyment on the platform. I'm not even going to talk about like numbers and all that stuff because I don't care about that myself, but enjoying your time on a platform, I think, is important.
Yeah, in fact, I made a few good friends via the app. I mean,
Yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome.
one.
So you did mention playfulness and curiosity. I was
Yes.
curious how both of those things influence your photography practice.
Yeah, massively. Because I'm a very curious person, and so I like to find things. I like to know. I mean, that's also influenced by my training in science, right? That's my approach to things. I just want to know. I have also quite a vivid imagination, and that plays a big role because I get carried away very easily by things that look something like something different,
Yes.
and so definitely curiosity drives me, and it also plays into the adoption of the abstract approach to photography, because I like when things can look different, can inspire a different way of reading an image. So for instance, there is this image I like, which is a scene out of a beach in low tide, where you have there is a white rock, and in the background there is a dark rock filled with limpets, and the first thing, the reaction that I have, wow, I said it looks like a starry night, and so
Oh,
that way of seeing something that is not really literally there inspires me to play. So it's I don't know if you remember when you were young, when you were playing, but I have very vivid memories of when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, and I was so enjoying myself playing around with my friends that I took a moment and I said, when I grow up, I have to remember how to do that. Because I realized that grown-up people forget how to play,
yes.
and you go through, you're growing up, and that enthusiasm gets suppressed. And it's so vital to enjoy life, because if you approach it in a playful way, serious, but playful way, you can draw so much enjoyment out of it, so much, yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to how I've been photographing the last few years. I especially love like taking a macro lens or a telephoto lens, and like you, I really do have a good time on the beach. Even though I don't live near a beach, every time I get a chance to be on a beach, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be super fun because, hey, I think part of it is that I don't have exposure to it very often, and so it's like, oh, I get to go play in the beach, and like you, I'm just up turning over rocks or like looking in nooks and crannies, and it's like a little treasure hunt to find some weird thing that has like a metaphor like you're describing, and I have a blast with that. I mean, and I also find that those are the images that like do almost the worst on social media, but I don't care. Like for me, they're the most fun for me because I like a couple of years ago I was walking along the beach near the redwoods in California, and I was actually hoping I was going to get fog and redwood trees, but like it wasn't foggy that day. But I walked on the beach instead, and I found this really awesome, huge chunk of driftwood. And because of the moisture that's in that part of this California, and I don't know, the way that the water worked there, like this driftwood had become exposed, and all of the gnarling patterns in the wood were like green and blue and all these weird aquamarine colors, and it looked like a topographic map. And so
Yeah.
I had a huge, I think I spent like an hour and a half just photographing this. It was probably this big, this little stretch of wood, Yeah, it was super fun.
Yes, I love beaches for that. I mean, there is really a lot to find, especially around here. There are lots of driftwood coming in, and so it's fun.
Yes,
Really.
lots and lots of fun. All right, so I know you just mentioned that you're working on building a website. I'm curious for you, what kind of story or impression you'll hope the website will convey about your photography and your creative journey? Like why create a website?
So I mentioned the primary reason was to kind of take stock of my work, right? It's almost like the process of grant writing from when I was at work, where you have to apply for funds, which is one of the things I didn't like, but okay. You basically look at the data you have, the story that you have built, the questions that come up, and you need to come up with a proposal for the next work that you want to do. So for me, looking at images to share on the website would go through that process. How far am I gone? Have I exhausted this topic of, it looks like, and it probably happens to many photographers, that they get enamored of a certain subject and they explore it as much as possible, and then they need to take a break and go somewhere to explore something else. So like I felt with my flower photography approach, and now I'm dealing with these abstract making images, double exposures. So I'm sure that at some point I'll need to move on. And so having the ability to see the progress and see, well, what else do I need for filling the gap, this need that I feel in myself. And so I think that perhaps that process will be useful. In terms of a story, I'm looking forward to developing one. I mean, I'm going to ask my pictures, what do they tell me? Is there any hidden message that needs to be brought up and revealed? Some of these things work almost unconsciously at a certain level, and they only come up to your awareness once you play and work with it. So it's going to be yet another discovery process.
Yeah, and I think a website offers a lot of vehicles through which you can kind of track your progress over time, which I think is an important thing to do, like look introspectively at your journey and at your work from an objective perspective. And I think when you have, photos from 10 years ago versus today, like in a perfect world, there's going to be a pretty big difference between those two, right? So, and that can work in a couple of ways. Like it's like, oh, I actually have gotten better, and that's cool. But also like, wow, look at the kind of photos that I'm drawn to now versus what I was drawn to back then, and what does that mean, and what do I want to do next? And so I think it's a really good avenue for doing that introspective work, which I think is super important.
Yeah, and I have to say that years ago, especially after I finished that course, and I was so excited about photography that I was daydreaming about making the transition from my work to becoming a professional photographer, especially after going through tough, stressful periods at work. But then thinking about it, I realized that if I made that transition, I would change the nature of photography for me. I mean, I would change what this process is giving me. So I decided that I would be better off keeping it as a hobby, so that it would fulfill these needs that I had for creativity, for being unbound to rules, or needs for sustaining myself economically. And so now that I'm retired, I have a few savings. So far, so good. We'll see what the economy brings us. But right now, I don't need too many things. So I don't have that urge to commercialize the product of my hobby. So that probably will not be the outlet for my website. Yeah, listening to professional photographers, I'm totally aware of what you guys have to deal with. And of course, it's lovely to be able to do a work that you love. I mean, that's what I felt with respect to science. But you have to deal with the parts that you don't like. And so...
Yeah, I feel like it's not for everyone. And I feel like the people that can succeed as a full-time photographer are able to compartmentalize their life a little bit in terms of when I go out on my trips for myself, I don't have this professional kind of like goal in mind. I'm just, for me, it's like my time and I'm having fun and I'm enjoying the process, and it's all about creativity and just enjoying my time in nature. But then I can also flip a switch and make it about that. So for me, it's like you have to be able to flip those switches pretty easily. Otherwise, it's going to be really frustrating for you.
Yes.
So I wanted to go back to something you said earlier that I kind of bit my lip a little bit because it's one of my favorite things to talk to people about. And you'd mentioned that, I'm just paraphrasing, but you were basically like, oh, I'm not going to call it art because that's a little, I think the word you used was...
Preposterous.
Yeah, or presumptuous, I think maybe was the word you used. So with that in mind, I've noticed that a lot of photographers struggle with these questions of artistic legitimacy and like, am I an artist? Am I not an artist? What's your approach to embracing the journey as opposed to chasing perfection, with this idea that your work from your perspective isn't necessarily art?
Well, as I said, the main drive is this inner need to be in that mental space that photography allows me to be in. And so I mean, in the past, friends keep on saying, well, why don't you print your pictures, and why don't you do something with your things? And the thought comes to mind, yes, maybe, but maybe it's too much effort for what I get out of it. So again, it comes down to what is this activity doing for me? Mm-hmm. And being able to get the most out of it for what it is that you need is the key. And so among the things that photography has offered me is a way to understand myself better. Mm-hmm. Because of this process where you go and completely get immersed in the activity, your brain, your mind is wiped out clear. I mean, there is no thought that comes in and disturbs me when I'm intensely working. And interestingly, that wiped out mind is fertile for a deeper introspection into what it is that is essential for me. It's important. And so once you put these things in perspective, then you know where to go. I mean, you don't... I stopped asking myself, well, is this artful enough? Is this worthy of approval from other people? If it comes, we're all humans, of course, we're gratified by... But rather than gratification for being, oh yeah, I'm good, I don't feel that. I'm happy to be accepted. So I guess that's more in tune with what I feel. I like to be part of something, and so if a community responds positively to what I do and I manage to communicate that excitement, that's enough for me.
It's interesting. I find a lot of people attach a lot of baggage onto this word art, right? Like you'd mentioned that it needs to be worthy of other people's approval. And I think deep down, like art doesn't need anyone else's approval. Like it can, and also the bar for art being art is like incredibly low, right? Like it could be someone's kindergarten painting that they did when they were 2-3 years old or whatever. And, or it can be this masterpiece painting, or it can be a really fascinating photograph. I think by and large, people attach way too many kind of like labels and ideas about what art is or isn't, including myself. Like I'm really bad at that too. And I'm trying to be more just kind of like whatever attitude about it, which I think is kind of what your attitude is as well. It's like, art, whatever. I'm just doing my thing and I'm having a good time and I'm enjoying myself and I'm getting more out of the process of engaging with the subject and creating than I am like worrying about what it is that comes out of that process, which I think lends itself to making stuff that's much better, much higher quality, much more personal, much more interesting.
It's more authentic,
Yes.
That's what, if you don't worry about this externality of the process, and you just follow your bliss, then it becomes something that is talking to people more, because it draws into a deeper common feeling that can be shared.
Yeah, and I know I'm painting with a super big brush when I say this, but I've found that a lot of people that are very quick to like talk about their photos as being art, and people who kind of lean heavily on like, oh, this is my art, and I find that it's oftentimes like that's like their kind of like excuse for doing stuff that maybe isn't personal, or maybe doing something that's they know isn't maybe necessarily super high quality, or maybe it's like chasing trends or whatever. Like I find people that are much more kind of loose about it or resist the idea of calling themselves artists. I find a lot of their work to be more interesting. Again, big brush, obviously doesn't apply to everyone, but those are just observations I've made over the last decade.
No, I think that being creative in any form is essential. I mean, I feel alive when I'm creating. I'm sure that everybody does the same. And, people think about creativity in a different way. Sometimes some people say, well, I'm not creative, so I don't do these things. And that's wrong. I mean, everybody is born with creativity. It's that we don't develop it, or we don't. First of all, I have to say that in whatever activities we do, as long as we put in ourselves, we are being creative, right? It can be your work, it can be your hobby, it can be, I don't know, being in the kitchen, cooking. As soon as you devote yourself completely to that activity, you are creating something. You're being creative. And I feel that creativity is essential for living a fulfilled life. It makes you feel alive. You're doing something, right? That is important to you. Again, you cannot create for other people. You have to create for yourself to be authentic, and that's when the joy comes through.
Yeah, absolutely. So along those same lines, I'm curious, what advice would you give other people who might be considering photography as a creative outlet in retirement or later in life?
Well, one thing I would say is start early, developing whatever creative outlets you want, because lots of people, when they get to retirement, which is quite a dramatic shift in your lifestyle, they feel and they suffer from that transition. So having something that you really like, and you can get the basics out of ironed out before you get to that point, is just the best preparation for enjoying an after work time in your life that can be as fulfilling and as enjoyable as your career, if you had one that was so. Obviously, lots of people are in works that they don't like, but even in that case, the ability to find something on the side that is an outlet for this creativity you need is very important. I highly recommend following that.
Yeah, and obviously this is influenced significantly by personality traits and whatnot, but I've often found that there's a lot of people who are entering retirement, getting into photography, and then they make it super, super, super competitive, and like they join all these camera clubs and they want to win everything, and they're, like I find, hey, like just relax, enjoy it. It's cool to be competitive. I'm a very competitive person myself, but I also find that, man, if you're doing it for those external reasons, like your enjoyment of it is probably going to be short-lived, in my opinion. So I'd be curious if you have similar thoughts on that, or.
I totally agree. Initially I thought, well, now that I go to Seattle, I'll get into a new environment. I'll join camera clubs, and then looking at the way they work in these camera clubs, I thought, it's not for me. I really don't like following rules and directions that don't fit with what what I need. And so the idea that you have to have this homework, okay, this week we do this, next week we do that. It can be a something very useful if you're starting, and you
Yes.
get very much help from the community. But at this stage, I just need to be free.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, last question I have for you. Who do you recommend for the podcast? Who are some people that our listeners need to know more about?
Yeah, I don't know how many of these people you have already considered for your list.
I have a secret answer because I know who you're gonna list, and I love all of them. But yes,
Okay,
go
good.
ahead.
Good. So, well, obviously these are people whose work really resonates with me. So, Lena Bruce is one person from the UK, and she does lots of impressive nature photography, also deals with water pattern photography. Kevin Chawla, also very much involved with abstract nature.
His stuff is crazy good.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'm surprised that you haven't gotten to him yet.
Working on it. Yeah, he was recommended by Ian Gaston 2 years ago, and ever since I didn't even know who he was until Ian recommended him, and I looked at his stuff, and like every year it just keeps getting better.
Yeah. Another one is Cesar Llaneza, I guess you pronounce his name. He's a Spanish guy, also who loves details in nature. And,
Yes, I actually got to meet him when I went to Spain a couple of years ago.
nice.
We were both in this award ceremony for Memorial Luisa competition, and he's a super, super, super nice guy.
Looks like. And Andrzej Milzewski, of course, you know him from the NLPA competitions that he keeps on winning. He's a very nice guy. I don't know if you met him. I had the opportunity and joy to get to know him a little bit when I attended Richard Martin's workshop 2 years ago.
Nice.
He was there, and so yeah, actually I didn't know his photography until he started putting it out, or he showed us a few of his pictures while it is quite impressive. And Christer Berg is a Swedish photographer, mostly working in black and white, but also small scenes, and I love his work.
Yeah, he's got some incredible stuff. I think my friend Eric Bennett calls him the Hans Strand of Sweden, which I think is very
Nice.
accurate. Well, Maria, this has been so much fun. I've been a longtime admirer of your photography, and so it's great to finally get a chance to talk to you about your work.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
Yes. Thanks so much for listening to my conversation with Maria Ruggieri. I hope that it left you feeling just as inspired as I was. Conversations like this are a great reminder that creativity is a lifelong gift, something that we can return to again and again, no matter where we are in life. Before you go, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit more about my new book, which is now live on Kickstarter. It's called The Colorado Way: Life Lessons from High Peaks and the Colorado Trail. It's a blend of memoir, photography, and personal growth, filled with stories and images from my 500-mile hike on the Colorado Trail and my decades-long journey climbing the state's highest 100 mountains. This is the most personal and ambitious project that I've ever created, and it's something that I truly believe will resonate with anyone who's ever sought clarity, healing, or direction in wild places. When you support the Kickstarter, you're helping bring this book into the world. You can choose from a range of rewards, including prints, postcards, and a lot more. Just find the link in the show notes to learn more and to back the project. And as always, if you want to support the podcast itself, you can do that over on Patreon. Every dollar helps me keep the show going strong. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.